In this lecture, we will discuss what science has to say about the issue of vegetarianism. I will eventually show in this lecture that science very unequivocally says that eating animals destroys the environment. So let us first look at the concept of the energy pyramid. So this is something that is called the energy pyramid. It contains various levels called trophic levels, and each of these trophic levels contains organisms which feed on the organisms at the trophic level below them. So tertiary consumers feed on secondary consumers feed on primary consumers, and so on. At the bottom of the trophic level are producers, which all vegetarians eat, namely photosynthetic plants mainly, and on the upper trophic levels are animals mainly. Every system is inefficient. Every system is not 100% efficient. So there is always a loss of energy as heat in any system. So this is a biological system, and on an average its efficiency is about 10%, which is relatively low. So if the total amount of energy locked up in the producers is 1000 kilocalorie, and the entire crop of producers is eaten up by primary consumers, only 100 kilocalorie will get transferred to the primary consumers, and the rest will be lost as heat. This should reduce to 10 kilocalorie for secondary consumers, and rest 9 kilocalories will be lost as heat. Similarly for tertiary consumers. So consuming non-vegetarian food which is at the higher trophic levels obviously directly creates global warming, because for production of 1 kg food of tertiary consumers, about 100 kg of food of 10 kg of food of secondary consumers is required, which in turn requires 100 kg of food of primary consumers, which in turn requires 1000 kgs of food of consumers. So for example, owl is a tertiary consumer. So if somebody eats 1 kilogram of owl, it would mean he would be eating about 1000 kilogram of plants. So this wastes resources for growing up those plants. This wastes energy, because only 1 kilocalorie is transferred to the person if he eats tertiary consumers, and the rest 999 kilocalories of energy is lost as heat, heating up the environment. And it also wastes huge amount of resources. So the amount of water required to grow up those 1000 kilograms of producers would be enormous, much more than had the person been vegetarian. He would have just eaten 1 kilogram of producers. But if he eats 1 kilogram of tertiary consumers, he effectively eats 1000 kilograms of producers. Similarly, if he eats 1 kilogram of secondary consumers, he eats 100 kilogram of producers. And if he eats 1 kilogram of primary consumers, he eats 10 kilogram of producers. So this is very inefficient, wastes too much energy, wastes too much resources, wastes too much money, and destroys the environment, and disturbs ecological balance. So non-vegetarianism basically ruins the environment. It's like we are eating up the earth itself, because every time we eat a few hundred grams of food on our plate, we are making 10 to 100 to 1000 times more effect on the environment by effectively eating up much more producers. So Dr. Rajendra Pachauri, who is chairman of the IPCC, which got the Nobel Peace Prize, once said, "Don't eat meat, ride a bike and be a frugal shopper. That's how you can help break global warming." Yes, it may seem surprising, but this has a huge effect on the environment and global warming. Changing your diet. So as we have seen, since it requires much more resources to make 1 kg of food at the higher trophic level, it also requires much more water. So water consumption in generating 1 kilo of food for beef is markedly more than for vegetarian foods. Even for chicken it is significantly more. Again, this is just different ways of looking at things. So protein from non-vegetarian food is the least energy efficient. Usually it is said that non-vegetarian food is a relatively good source of protein, but this table here shows that on the right side we have calories of petroleum energy required to produce 1 calorie of the food. So to produce 1 calorie of beef protein requires 78 calories of petroleum, while for corn, wheat and soya bean it is much less for vegetarian foods. For non-vegetarian foods there is a marked increase. So it means it takes 78 times as much fossil fuel energy to make a hamburger as it takes to make a soy burger. So you know what you are eating next time when you go to eat a burger. So on an average, because of this inefficiency, when we eat organisms at the higher trophic level, on an average 1 meat based diet could feed 15 plant based diets or more. This has direct implications for the hunger in the world. So by eating non-vegetarian food we may be reducing the food for our brothers who are starving in Africa and some regions of India and so on. Now it is extremely surprising that changing your diet is probably the best way that you can help save the environment. It is even better than purchasing a eco-friendly car over a non-eco-friendly car. So Toyota Camry is a typical car, and a Toyota Prius is a hybrid car, which is celebrated for its environmental low environmental footprint. So a lot of environmentally conscious people would like to purchase Toyota Prius over Toyota Camry, even though it is a little bit even though it may be a little bit costlier. So but as it turns out, the effect that they would be making by purchasing a Toyota Prius or Toyota Camry is most of the time smaller than the effect that they would be making by changing what is on their plate. So research at the University of Chicago has shown that switching from standard American diet to a plant-based diet could result in preventing an extra 1.5 tons of greenhouse gas emissions per person per year. For comparison, switching from a standard sedan like Toyota Camry to a hybrid Toyota Prius saves only about 1 ton of CO2 emissions. So so it is clear that it is surprising as well as quite unequivocal from this that changing your diet may be one of the best ways to remain friendly to the earth. You may well not change the car, but you must change your diet if you are environmentally conscious. So this research was published with this nice title, "Do you eat like an SUV?" So as it turns out, the people who even adopt a slight reduction in eating meat save about 0.57 tons of CO2 per person per year, and those who completely leave meat but continue to eat milk and egg, which is lacto-ovo, they save about 1.57 tons of CO2 equivalent per person per year, which is much more than about 1 ton of CO2 equivalent saved per person per year by switching between a Camry and a Prius. So United Nations says the following in one of its reports: almost a fifth of global warming emissions comes from raising animals for food. That's more emissions than from all of the world's transportation combined. This is really shocking because most of the environmentally conscious people and activists would rather try very hard to save pollution from the transportation while they would be unaware about the pollution of the environment resulting from raising animals for food. Raising animals for food emerges as one of the top 2 or 3 most significant contributors to the most serious environmental problems at every scale, from local to global. Now PETA says this: non-vegetarian diet requires growing 16 times as much crops as needed for a vegetarian diet. So this should be clear by now, because when we eat organisms at the higher trophic level, we are effectively consuming more than 10 times of organisms at the lowest trophic level, namely producers, which are needed for a vegetarian diet. So an average person does more to reduce global warming emissions by going vegetarian than by switching to a Prius. This is the conclusion of the same research by University of Chicago that we have seen in the last few slides. Now United Nations further says that animal agriculture takes up an incredible 70% of all agricultural land and 30% of the total land surface of the planet. As a result, farmed animals are probably the biggest cause of slashing and burning of world's forests. So this is an eye-opener for those who feel that agriculture is causing significant cutting of trees. So maybe eating animal-based foods can result in conservation of forests. Now this is inherently flawed because eating animal food directly results in more than 10 times cutting of forests as would be required for a vegetarian food. So now the UN report also formalizes this. As a result, farmed animals are probably the biggest cause of slashing and burning of the world's forests. Furthermore, today 70% of former Amazon rainforest is used for pasture land and feed crops cover much of the remainder. Note that here feed crops is written, which is required for animals and not for human beings. Now raising animals for food accounts for 9% of our carbon dioxide emissions. It emits 37% of our methane, which is a much more potent gas, a much more potent greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide, and a whopping 65% of our nitrous oxide, which is even more potent gas than methane. So usually when we imagine greenhouse gas emissions, we look at pictures like this, but we probably should be imagining what is on our plate more than such pictures. Non-vegetarianism is also extremely cruel, but I would not go much into this since we are confined to what science says about non-vegetarianism and vegetarianism in this lecture. So the United States alone slaughters more than 10 billion land animals every year. In comparison, the entire human population is 7 billion only. Now 20% of all land animals at any point of time, even currently, will eventually get eaten by human beings. This is a very big impact on the ecology and environment and diversity, because we would eat about 1/5 of the earth's animals that are alive right now. An article in the Huffington Post on 18th January 2011 said this: through non-vegetarianism, we are eating our planet to death. Here is a really bad news. Despite all this, meat consumption has increased 5 times in the last 50 years, and if nothing is done, it would increase by at least another 2 times in the next 50 years, effectively ruining the earth. Now, as seen previously, raising animals for food also gigantically magnifies the water scarcity. Now, it accounts for most of the water consumed in the world, emits 2/3 of the world's acid rain causing ammonia. It is the world's largest source of water pollution. So when we eat non-vegetarian food, unknowingly we are creating more trouble for our less privileged 1 billion brothers and sisters for whom safe water is almost unavailable. Now Sir Paul McCartney also understands this and says, if anyone wants to save the planet, all they have to do is just stop eating meat. Non-vegetarianism also causes hunger, as seen previously, because it leads to consumption of much more resources than would be required if all of us eat vegetarian food, thus making food available for our less privileged brothers and sisters. So about 1 in 7 people in the world are malnourished, that is about 1 billion people, which is really unfortunate in today's world. And even if 2% of the world's non-vegetarian population converts to vegetarianism, hunger can be wiped out of the world. This is because when 2% of the population converts to vegetarianism, it would result in about 25% more availability of vegetarian foods, because that 2% of the population, by eating non-vegetarian food, is effectively eating about 10 to 15 times vegetarian food, that is effectively eating food of about 20 to 30% of the population. So If it stops that, the food would become available for rest of the people and there would be no hunger in the world. Non-vegetarianism is also costly. So because it requires much more resources, non-vegetarian is almost always significantly costlier than vegetarian food. So non-vegetarianism is harsh for the environment, is costly, results in global warming, results in hunger, results in water scarcity, and guess what? It also hurts you because it results in bad health. So non-vegetarianism is really unhealthy. A countless number of studies have shown this. So some large scale studies have shown that ischemic heart disease was 30% lower in vegetarians. A 2010 study, famous as the Seventh Day Adventists, showed that vegetarians had scored better on even depression tests and had better mood profiles, and so led much more fulfilling and happier lives. So if you want to remain happy, you should adopt vegetarianism, as at least that is what research says. Studies have also linked non-vegetarianism to coronary artery disease, hypertension, obesity, and even some forms of cancer. Studies have also shown that vegetarians tend to have lower levels of cholesterol, lower blood pressure, less incidence of heart disease, less incidence of hypertension, less incidence of diabetes, less incidence of renal disease, which is kidney disease, less incidence of metabolic syndrome, less incidence of dementia such as Alzheimer's disease and other disorders. Now, so much evidence is available for showing that vegetarian food is much more healthier that it is official. The US Department of Health says the following: in prospective studies of adults compared to non-vegetarian eating patterns, vegetarian style eating patterns have been associated with improved health outcomes, lower levels of obesity, a reduced risk of cardiovascular disease, and lower total mortality. The American Dietetic Association also says this: vegetarian diet is healthful, nutritionally adequate, and provides health benefits in the prevention and treatment of certain diseases. Countless number of studies have also shown that non-vegetarianism causes early death. So a study found mortality ratio for vegetarians to be 0.84 as compared to 1 for non-vegetarians. Another study showed that vegetarians had 24% lower mortality from ischemic heart disease than non-vegetarians. Still another study showed that British vegetarians have a lower mortality rate as compared with the general population. Another study showed that adopting vegetarianism for a long time, that is greater than 2 decades, leads to about 3.6 year increase in life expectancy on average. This research has been published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. Life expectancy is considerably greater in southern France, where more vegetarian food is consumed than northern France. So irrespective of geography, irrespective of people, caste, color, creed, race, gender, it has been shown that vegetarian food is much more healthier than non-vegetarian food. Vegetarians have less risk of atherosclerosis, diabetes, aging, and chronic renal failure, which is chronic kidney failure. This research has been published in the Institute of Preventive and Clinical Medicine. Now let us specifically look at 1 or 2 non-vegetarian foods and see why they shouldn't be eaten. So why not to eat egg? Egg is one of the largest repositories of cholesterol, a substance that clogs your arteries and leads to heart disease. And why not to eat fish? Fishes today grow in really polluted waters and so have heavy deposits of heavy metals inside them, which go to your body when you eat them. So a person who consumes just 1 luna per week could exceed the cutoff for safe mercury consumption by 30%. And almost all fishes significantly add to heavy metals in the body, thus increasing the risk of brain damage. So switch to vegetarianism and prolong your life while saving the earth for your children too. Thanks for watching. Have a nice vegetarian food. Thank you.